LP's party office. This morning we are hosting this press conference to inform the media and to inform the general public about the candidate selection process that took place in Central Leeward. I do have here with me Sir Louie Straker, also the current representative for the constituency of Central Leeward, Mr. Maxwell Charles, and also prospective candidate in Mr. Dunstan Johnson, who is also here at the head table this morning. We are being carried live here on Star FM and also on Gary Funa Radio. We have present here the members of the media, and let me welcome you here this morning as we begin these discussions here, or as we have our press conference. We are, in our presence, we have VC3, there's NBC Radio, of course Star is carrying live, we have Eyewitness News, and of course SVT TV. Now, VC3, yes, VC3 was mentioned. VC3 and SVT TV are here. Now, the Unity Labour Party over the past months had started its candidate selection processes in various constituencies, and we have done a good bit of them. There are still one or two left to be completed. These are going to be completed before our party's convention, which is scheduled for the 19th of April. And of course, Central Leeward, being no exception, had their constituency candidate selection process. Now, we have called this press conference to deal with some of the myths and the political mischief that seem to be, some are trying to make surrounding the candidate selection process in Central Leeward. We just want to let both the media know and the general public that this is a totally transparent process and that there is total cohesion between all the forces and all persons involved in the candidate selection process, and of course in the constituency of Central Leeward, where all supporters and well-wishers are totally happy with the outcome of the candidate selection process. Now, I don't want to be too lengthy, but as chairman of this party, I want to welcome back Sir Hilton Louie Straker, our former deputy political leader and deputy prime minister, and we know very well of his experience and his worth and merit, and we are extremely happy to have him back. As a matter of fact, the candidate selection process really is an internal matter when it comes to the question. It's a party internal matter. However, because of the transparency and the manner in which we operate in the ULP, we have decided to call this press conference so that we could dispel, any myths, and as I said before, any political mischief that is being orchestrated by any person or persons with relation to this particular process. Now, I do have, as I said before, Mr. Maxwell Charles, who is the current representative for the constituency, and Dunstan Johnson, and I would ask them to make, some brief comments with relation to the process, and of course I know that they will all express their undying and unwavering support for the selected candidate in Sir Louie Straker, and also their total support for the party as a whole. Both of them having participated in the process, in that Sir Louie was actually nominated by Maxwell Charles and seconded by Dunstan Johnson. This in itself, shows the level of cohesion and the organized manner in which this was done. So I just want to ask Maxwell to just make some brief comments, and following Maxwell, we would have some comments from Mr. Dunstan Johnson, and then Sir Louie Straker, and then we will open the floor to have some questions from the media. Maxwell.
Well, Thank you so much for being surrounded by so many gadgets. Good morning, everyone. Before I go any further, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I would like to take this opportunity to refute any statements made, as it were, against me in terms of my ability to be representative in Central Leeward. First, I want to thank those who supported me over the past 4 years in my duties as a rep. And again, in no uncertain terms, I would like to refute those statements wherever they're made, whether it be CNN, BBC, or wherever. That being said, in Central Leeward, we were in the process of candidate selection. And it was felt as a party that this caused a certain degree of division within the constituency, and perhaps on a lesser basis, in a lesser way, outside the environs and bounds of the constituency. Be that as it may, it was felt that if either of us go forward, Dunstan or I, that this may have affected the party somewhat. And, well, the long and short of it is history now. In the interests of unity in the party, I gave in and I nominated Sir Louie. Let me here say I'm a loyal supporter of the ULP. This was never in question. And I made my contribution. I brought this seat in 2010. And again, I worked hard. I remember coming back here in 2010 to bring back this seat for the Unity Labour Party. And I was well pleased, and the people were well pleased with me too. So, at this point, I haven't changed. I'm the same Maxwell Charles. And people who were born around the mid-20th century like me, I think we all have a level head. So my maturity and my loyalty to the ULP and its programs has been brought to bear here, right now, in the past, and will be in the future. Being a continued supporter and one of the leaders in the ULP, I want us to go forward as a united front so that we would not allow those who may want to roll back the fortunes of this great nation. They wouldn't have a chance. So that's my opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maxwell, for your statements here and your pledge of your unwavering and undying support for the Unity Labour Party and for the programs and the policies of this great party, and for your continued support, going forward in terms of the governance of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would now ask Mr. Dunstan Johnson to make his some remarks. I think it might be easier if we could just switch chairs rather than you moving from left to right all the time with these gadgets. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
First, let me say good morning to all those who are under the sound of my voice, and for the media and those at the head table. I also would like to thank the party for giving me the opportunity to lend credence to the events leading up to and what took place on Sunday the 15th. I should say here that I'm an ardent supporter of the ULP since 1998. In fact, Sir Louie here to my left was the person who I admired and who had given me the chance to be. I would also like to thank the party for the recognition that they're giving to me as a potential candidate in the whole process. And that's why I'm here today. I would also like to thank my very ardent supporters in Barley, Leeward, and Bukomen, for they held fast with me, they held steady, and I also want to thank them for the opportunity, for the belief that they instilled in me, belief and confidence, I should also add. I will say that the democratic process conducted by the party up to the point of the 15th was conducted with due diligence, and the process on the very day was also conducted democratically. Yes, it is a fact that the vote was not carried out due to the decisions, well, I can say, let me say here, not the divisions, as some people said, on the day between party supporters. I share the sentiments of the chairman. It was an internal matter, and people were buoyed up. It is obvious in such a process that one candidate, potential candidate, will not have all persons present on his side. That will not happen. So, Comrade Charles and myself had our supporters, very, very ardent and full-fledged supporters of the party. What I will say here is that persons hold firm in support of their candidate. It was not a mudslinging, can-throwing as depicted in one of the papers, in the comic area of one of the papers. But it was a case where persons simply hold fast to this candidate that they supported. There's nothing wrong with that. But it came to a point where the comrade leader of the party, Honorable Prime Minister Gonsalves, being the leader at the time, had to bring some closure on the matter. The day was a day of decision. And if the decision could not have been made, if persons at that time, as they did, hold fast to their potential candidate, it is obvious that we came to a block in the road. And something must give way. Neither of us wanted to give way, so the party leader, which is his duty as a leader, to take that mantle and make the decision in the best interest of the party. And I welcome it, I shared it, I supported it. His decision to bring back Comrade Straker, it was a means of healing the breach. Comrade Louie is still loved by his people in Central Leeward. Still walks in Central Leeward, he moves around all the time. He has the charisma, the integrity, the honesty to lead the way as he did prior to 2010. I am confident that the people of Central Leeward, the ULP supporters are there. He will be able to galvanize that support in a very meaningful way and lead us to a successful next term under this government. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dunstan. Now, we will hear from the candidate for Central Leeward, which is Louie Straker, and he would share his sentiments with us on the process, and I think also would probably provide you with some of his reasons, his in-depth reasons for his eventual return and participation into active politics. So I don't want to keep him long from that. So Louie, you could just change your seat with me and come in front of the gadgets.
Thank you, Chairman Snag, the Chairman of the Unity Labour Party, and I want to thank my colleagues here, Honorable Maxwell Charles, the current parliamentary representative of Central Leeward, and Dunstan Johnson, one of the contestants in the candidate selection, for being here and for sitting with me at this head table, and for the media for coming out here this morning. This is part of the ongoing process of transparency and to show you how democratic the party is and its election process. There's been all kind of misinformation as to the selection process, but it must be known that it was truly democratic. I had no intention of contesting in the elections of 2015. As a matter of fact, I had studiously avoided being at Peter Soap, and I told the party leader and the general secretary that I would not be at Peter Soap. Let the candidate selection go forward. Whoever is the candidate, I would do whatever they want me to do in making sure that the seat is retained by the ULP. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was catapulted into the position of being the candidate. And when the Prime Minister at first asked me whether I would consider it, I told him outright no. At this stage, I did not want to get back into the political fray. It is not a very easy thing to engage in a campaign. And when I went down to Barley, and as I look in Leo and saw some of the hills that I had to climb, and you would see one house on the top of the hill, and when you go up there, you'll see half a dozen more that you have to visit and do house-to-house campaigning. It is not very easy. And so I tried to dismiss it from the Prime Minister and ask him to try work with the two candidates. He got back to me and told me that there were several leaders from the constituency and the two candidates who have said that their supporters were so entrenched and intransigent that we were not making any progress into the selection process, and it seems as if I would have to consider it. I, at the time, was getting ready to go to a crusade in Barley, and I told the Prime Minister I don't think I would show up there. And I didn't want to show up there because I remember what happened at Bayaboo when the process was being carried out between Fitzpatrick and Glenn. Certain parliamentary representatives from other constituencies were there, and both sides accused them of, when they see them talking to people, that they were actually campaigning for or against one candidate or the other. And I wanted to show complete neutrality, and I did not want to be there at Peter Soap. I wanted the process to go forward. The Prime Minister informed me that the two candidates have expressed the view that if I would come into the ring, the incumbent, Maxwell Charles, would move the motion, and the challenger, Mr. Dunstan Johnson, would second the motion. I still hesitated, and I told him, well, I'm going on to Barely. And then when he came, I told him at that time, I didn't want to make it appear that I was double-crossing either Maxwell Charles or Dunstan Johnson, since they were the declared candidates. And therefore, for me to even consider it, both of them would have to tell me that they are willing and ready to have me as the candidate. And something that is hardly reported is that when the Prime Minister came to get me at Barely from under the 10th Crusade, Maxwell was there and Dunstan was there. So I had the two candidates and the leader of the party coming there to fetch me, to go back to Petersburg to be the candidate. And when I got back there, the Prime Minister made a speech, and the motion was made by Maxwell, seconded by Dunstan. I had very little choice but to obey the call of my party and my constituency. This was not a situation where the Prime Minister just picked me and said, you're going to be the candidate. There was a vote, as you would imagine. When a motion is made and seconded, a vote was made, and the people selected me as the candidate. Now, I've had a very long and very close relationship. Dunstan has told you. Been with me from 1998. He's supported me from that time. And the Prime Minister has always said, if you sing in the choir, you can become the Pope. And so he wanted to, there were people behind him. I tell you, there were serious people behind him who wanted him to be the candidate for this. He entered the ring in 2010, and he stepped aside for Maxwell Charles and gave tremendous support at a crucial time in 2010. And I thought the 2010 election was a very tough one, because as you know, there is no party in power that had lost the referendum and came back to win the elections. So we had a good chance of losing the elections because of the loss of the referendum. And Dunstan was out there doing his best to campaign for Maxwell. And I appreciate what he has done, and I appreciate the success the party has had in Central Leeward. I've known Maxwell, well, I don't know how old he was when he came back from Aruba or Curacao. Which one of them? No, Aruba? Aruba. His parents brought him back from Aruba, but I knew his parents. I knew his mother particularly. She's from Buckerman. And he came back as a little boy, grew up in the church with me there, and we have had the closest of relationship. He's married into my family, and I almost got married into his family. But we've had the warmest of relationship, the two families, and he had always said, when I was out, he would like to succeed me, and he had his day. Now, Maxwell has had an outstanding career in public service. He's been a teacher in both Leeward and in Barely. And when this government established a secondary school at Buckerman Bay, he was the first principal of that school. And when we needed a minister counselor, or the number 2 man in the High Commission in London, we chose Maxwell to be the minister counselor in London. And when he came back, he worked, I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, he worked as Director of Foreign Policy Research in my ministry until he became a candidate and was elected in the constituency of Central Leeward. Dunstan, as you know, has been a teacher for many years. When I came back, they told me he was a good organizer in Barely, an activist, a grassroots man in Barely. So I was very happy that he was involved in the political process, and he himself has taught for many years, because I met many people who have told me Dunstan taught them in school. Now he is the manager of the fisheries complex down there, and I appreciate his entering into the selection process of the party. I appreciate having men like these in the party and who would work for the party and work for me to make this an abundant success. So it was no secret the process was quite open and transparent how I was selected. It must go on to the other institutions, organs of the party, I should say, in order to have my candidacy adopted and ratified, etc., until it gets to the National Convention on the 19th of April. Now, I had started to make some cursory visits in the constituency. Cursory visits. I just wanted to see if I remembered how to campaign again and to get my feet wet, because I've been out of this thing for over 4 years. And there is a so-called secret, clandestine, surreptitious tape. In some countries that would be illegal, but we don't have the laws preventing that, where I heard people were demeaning the process of the party, saying that we did some injury to Maxwell. And when I got to the top of the hill, I told them nobody did any injury. I told them even the Prime Minister has to go through this process and be reselected every election. Now, I had some criticism as to the style, not to the substance, the style of Maxwell. And it's completely blown out of context. Everybody is not the same. I am not nearly as aggressive as a certain member of the opposition. I won't go that far to be as aggressive. But I have to have a certain level of assertiveness, because I realize I'm in politics. And notwithstanding the fact that like Maxwell, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, I know when you're in politics, it is not like being in the church and being meek and mild, because sometimes you never get anything done if you're too meek and mild. You have to know how to assert yourself. And this is not any great criticism of Maxwell. If that was all that Hillary Clinton had to say of Obama, then there would have been no problem. If this is all the members of Parliament of the Labour Party had to say about Miliband, there's no problem. I made sure I indicated in that tape that I had some admiration for Maxwell, because he is a fine gentleman. Fine gentleman. He is a man that you can respect. He is a man that you can trust. And therefore, you must give it balance. I didn't say anything derogatory. I didn't berate Maxwell. I didn't say anything demeaning of Maxwell. But the media and the opposition party would try their best. As a matter of fact, he has received several calls from them, trying to pretend that they are sympathizing with him and trying to see how they can stoke the fire, to see whether they can get him, to use him as a wedge, to divide the constituency and the party. But Maxwell has far more sense than that. He knows that what this party has done for this country, what we have done for Cenral Leeward, he and I, there are certain projects that I started and he has carried to the end, and he would not swallow their bait. So this is just mischief being carried on by certain people, and they're not going to succeed, because I know I'll have the support of Maxwell and Dunstan. And if it is necessary, and I call on them to go forward with me, they would be there in the constituency campaigning with me. People ask me, why are you coming back into this political fray? You look so much younger than when you were in office. And I have said to them that I did not seek the position. The position sought me. There is no person sitting here who, if the Prime Minister were to come to them and tell them, listen, I need you at this time to do a particular job, that they would tell the Prime Minister, no, I'm not going to do it. And I could not say no to the Prime Minister. I couldn't say no to the constituents, because the constituents and the Prime Minister have been very kind. They have been good to me. Whatever I have achieved in public life, it is because of the Prime Minister and my constituents in Cenral Leeward, and all those who have worked to help me make that possible for the almost 17 years, maybe 3 months short of 17 years, that I became an elective member for Cenral Leeward. And I have great vision and plans for my constituency in Cenral Leeward. I've heard the opposition candidate, Ben Exeter, said he went away as a child when he was 9 years of age, and he spent 40 years in Canada, and since all these years, now he has returned, there has been no improvement in Central Leeward. Well, I thought the media should take him to task. You go down to Central Leeward. You see what has been happening in Central Leeward. Central Leeward. When he left here, as I've said, there were donkey carts picking up the garbage. We don't have that now. People were bringing wood on their head as fuel to cook with. You don't see that now in Central Leeward. A lot of people were living in thatch roof and watland dab, which is the kind of house I was born in, and I grew up as a little boy. Nothing demeaning about it. That was the situation. And I live over in an area called Rutland Vale, where my grandmother and my mother work as estate workers. Nothing demeaning. I proudly say that. I'm not running away from that at all. And I mean, I have done much to uplift Central Leeward. You come to Central Leeward, you see a waterfront second to none in the region as soon as you get on the hill. And you would realize that this was done by this ULP government while I was representing the constituency. You would see a learning resource center in Leyu. This was done through my friend Ambassador Elizabeth Cho while she was ambassador here, and my friend appealing directly to him, who was the foreign minister in Taiwan, who told me, yes, you must have one, and sent the money right away to get my learning resource center in Leyu. When he left here, we had post office at the downstairs of a resident there. There was no electricity in that post office. There was no toilet. There was no water. And the poor lady, when I came back here, said sometimes she had to hold in her urine. And she thinks that is what contributed to her getting a urinary tract infection. One of the first things I did was to remove them from that area. And we hired new quarters. So within the Learning Resource Center, we have a post office, we have the library. There were a few books scattered in a place called a library, but we have a decent library in Central Leeward. We have a bank in that building. We have the town board in that building. So to say that nothing has been done in Central Leeward, someone would have to have glaucoma and they can't see well. When you look at the situation there in Central Leeward, when I took over in Barley, the wharf was broken at the front and at the further end. One of the first things I did was to get Glenn Jackson, who was the Prime Minister's press secretary at the time. We went down to Barley, and I said, we must have a new wharf in Barley. We not only have a new wharf, but we have another one in Battle and Glass. The secondary school in Barley was made from metal, and it was corroding. There was no assembly hall. I said, we must have a secondary school in Barley, and we have a modern secondary school at Peter Soap with science lab, language lab, etc. I said, when they were talking about housing scheme, I said, I want the biggest one for Central Leeward. And you go down there and look up at Peter Soap, what the opposition criticized, that we put in people to live in a goo-goo field. We made it into the largest and the best housing scheme in St. Vincent, low-income housing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And by the way, let me go back to when he said there's no improvement. When he left here, most people had latrines. They were using the outside house. Now you hardly can find one in Central Leeward. And when you talk about the prison, when we took over in 2001, one of the first things Commissioner Kwao said is the security is the major issue we face, because just before that, there was war at the prison. People were on all the prison, the roof and so on. There was pandemonium down there. And we looked for the money to build a new correctional facility, which we have at Belle Isle, all within the constituency. We have a Golden Year Center. We have two in the country, one in the Prime Minister's constituency and one in Central Leeward. For the first time, as I mentioned before, we have a secondary school at Bukomen Bay. We have not only a learning resource center at Leyu, but we have one in Barley. We have a resort, not a government resort, but we facilitated that. So when the gentleman said that he has seen no improvement in Central Leeward, I think the media ought to take him to task and ask him what happened, whether we have to send him to Cuba under Vision Now, because it is quite obvious. As a matter of fact, I heard some of his colleagues have told him he must try and maneuver that statement by saying he hasn't seen much. But those say there's no improvement. So there are many more things I can mention. Some of them were completed by Maxwell. The lands of Glebe Hill given out to the people at 10 cents, 10 cents or 50 cents? 10 cents a square foot. Where there was a stud center, we gave it out to 21 poor people there. We have paved road in every area. When he left here, we had no more than 3 nurses in all Central Leeward. Now we have over 24 nurses in Central Leeward. We had no more than 3 policemen in the area. Now we have dozens of policemen. And we have a new cemetery in Leeward. Those of you who have had the occasion, it is the best kept cemetery in all of St. Vincent with the largest chapel. No other cemetery has a chapel as large as that. We have sporting facilities at Curtin that the per-regional matches on. So we have done a lot for Central Leeward under the 10 years I was in government and the 5 years that Maxwell has been in office. And when he said nothing was done, no improvement, what he's doing, he's castigating the NDP that had 17 years in office. So if there is no improvement, what he's saying, for the 17 years that NDP was in office, nothing has been done in Central Leeward because they had more years than we have, and if there's no improvement, quite naturally, there would have been no improvement under NDP. So as we see, this whole thing is just a propaganda scheme, and some people are falling for it. And what do I expect from Central Leeward? I would remain there for the term and for as long as the people want me. I hope not too long, because I realize I have to make way for younger people in the future, and it's not something I want to grab onto. But I would love for Central Leeward. We are working on the polyclinic in Bokoment Bay that was started since I was there, and I was a member of the ACP Parliament in Brussels. That is the African, Caribbean, Pacific Parliament that dealt with the European funds, the European development funds that got the money and earmarked the money for health and the polyclinic in Bokoment Bay. And that is being carried out now under Maxi's watch. So we are moving forward with health. I heard my opponent said that one of his chief aim is to improve health in the constituency. And he has started that because he brought some strips to the health clinic in Liu, and they didn't have any strips for a year. I was a little bit flabbergasted because even though I'm out of office, when there is a need in the constituency, the people still ask me whether I can help. And when I waited until Monday morning and I called the clinic and I said, what is this story that you were running the clinic without strips to test blood sugar for a whole year? And the nurses have to wipe their hands in either their dresses or their aprons. And they said, so Louis, we were completely embarrassed when the statement was made. He said, we have this is a community with a lot of people with diabetes. We could not be without strips for a whole year. So we have our glucometer, the machine that they use to test, and we have strips. But what the candidate for the other party did, Mr. Exeter, was to bring home a machine from Canada and gave it to them. And they told him, well, we can't use this because, you know, each brand of machine has its own strips. So he brought no strips. And they had the machine set aside there while they were using their machine and the strips. And when he went back to Canada, he brought some strips. But they said they were never out of strips at any time. And he said they were out of strips for a year. And he said this idea that we wipe our hands in our uniform or our apron is not true. We have a lot of Kleenex here in the clinic. And as a matter of fact, I have received a lot of gloves from the United States. I have provided a lot of gloves recently to the clinic, more than they can use in a year. And I had so many. I took some to the clinic in Clare Valley. I took some to the clinic in Barley. I took some to the clinic in Vermont. So to say that the nurses had to wipe their hands in their dresses, that is a low hit on the nurses and on the clinic in Leeward. Also, I want to have the development of Mount Twin Peter Soap. Since I was there, we have been talking and working on this project, the development of the resort at Mount Twin Peter Soap. I regretted I had left office without at least the groundbreaking. But we have a company now that is coming in to set up a resort. And I'm involved with that because the National Properties, of which I'm chairman, is involved. I met with the people, and they're anxious to begin signing an agreement sometime in July. And we hope that we can get that resort. Could you imagine the amount of jobs that would provide for the people of Central Leeward? I hear the opposition candidates say, oh, he's employing people. He has 4 people working under him in his home in Leeward. I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know what he's paying them. But I'm looking for jobs to suit the whole constituency, where we'll have hundreds of jobs for masons, hotels, the cabanas, the villas, the golf course. So that is my ambition for Central Leeward. Of course, we would have the ongoing things as meeting the needs of those who are marginalized. Education, one of the top priorities. Improving the quality of education, and make sure that our children get a good education in Central Leeward. And as I just mentioned, providing jobs and the safety nets for those who are most vulnerable. So that has been my ambition, and I wanted to clarify these things because sometimes I know the reporters, and you're in a better position than I am, you know. When you write your stories, there's nobody to second guess you or to question you or to criticize you. I'm going into a position now where everything I said is put under microscope. My whole life would be under a microscope. But I realize I'm in public life, and that is the nature of it. And nobody ever questioned. Sometimes they don't even call me to ask, well, what are your views on this? We have this story, and what do you say about it? They just run because it's hot gossip, and it sounds nice and juicy, so they publish the thing. But professional journals would want to hear from the other side. They would call and say, well, what is it? What are your views on this? And we are going to publish it. If I have no view, I say, go ahead and publish it. I can't stop you from publishing it. But sometimes there are 2 sides to a story. And you must always try to get the views from the other side and make sure that you have a balanced view in your reporting. And don't just send out one thing as if you are being used by somebody, so that you are propagandists for those who want to spread their propaganda in the population here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But I know I can handle things like that. Not overly aggressive, but in explaining the truth. And God has given me the ability that I can articulate what I want to say and how I want to say it. I came into politics with no idea that I was coming back to this country to enter politics, and I need to say that. But I always loved politics. There is nobody here who was alive, probably, or were involved when Dr. Eric Williams was Chief Minister, not Prime Minister, Chief Minister of Trinidad. And as a young boy, I used to sit up late at nights to hear the debate in the Trinidad Parliament with Dr. Williams, Mr. James from Tobago, Mr. Sukaran, Kapil Deal, Bade Sagan Maraj. These were the giants. Uriah Butler. These were the giants in politics, and I admire them. Oh, they had the gift of talk. These men could articulate, and I admire them. But I went to America, and I always said, and when I married my wife, this year we are celebrating our 42nd anniversary, I told her I would have to go home to St. Vincent's at some point to give some service to my country. I didn't know what and how, but I always felt the idea that maybe getting in politics would have been a good thing that I could give of my service. And it was Starkey and Winfield Williams who came up to New York. He was sent by the people of Central Leeward. They were calling me, begging me to come back because they wanted a change from Hobie Young. And when Winfield and Starkey came up, I told them, let me pray about the matter. I got my group in the church and asked them to help pray with me to see if this was the way the Lord was leading. I was a vice president of a bank. My salary there was far more, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times what I came back here to work for, because I came back in opposition here. But I wanted to make a contribution as the son of the estate workers in Leeward. I know the cry of poor people. The burden of poor people is on my heart. And I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to make a contribution. And when I came back, there were those who said I was away for too long because I was away for 31 years. And I told my wife said, listen, we prayed about this matter. I believe it's the will of God that you should go back. When the election, I told her, don't come down to the elections because I'll be embarrassed in front of my wife if I were to lose. She said, no, I'm going to stand by my man, and win or lose, I have a right to be at your side. And when she came, thank God, we won by 94 votes. Some people say we started at the top and I ended up with, when I left office, I left with about 600 votes. And from 94, I worked my way up. I was able to get the confidence of the people in Central Leeward. 7 years in opposition when I couldn't do very little for them. But I humbled myself. And I went to some of the offices of the then ministers of the NDP government. I was sometimes embarrassed. Sometimes they come and a little girl would come out and tell me, well, the minister said you didn't have an appointment and he can't see you, you must come back. I never did that to one NDP person while I was in office. As long as I heard a representative was there, I made room and tell them, come on in. I would go out and bring them in. But I was humiliated at times when the NDP was in office. But thank God the people realized that I was working on their behalf. And I did a lot for them. And when I went up to America, I would do a lot for them. And when I was in America, my record is quite clear. When I went away, what I have done, and if you were to bring my opponent, he said he was away for 40 years. I was away for 31 years. And ask what we have done for our poor people in our constituents. Compare what he has done with what I have done. And let us see who has the burden of their constituents. I never came back here without providing help for my people. When I was away, the sporting groups would send and tell me they want sporting gears. I would send it for them. I never came back here Christmas. I used to buy 11 bags of flour, 11 bags of sugar, 11 bags of rice, kill cattle, and tell the church, you distribute this to the poor people in the community. Because I realize what poverty is. And I have this burden on my heart. I carry this burden for poor people, and I would always do. And this is why I have come back. If I can be a further service to the people in the constituency, particularly those who are poor, I would always do it in office, outside of office. Because since I've been out, a lot of people come to me, and I can't turn them away. Can't turn them away. Not only in Central Leeward, but in other constituencies. So this has been the position, and I thank you for hearing me and for giving me an opportunity to say what I want to say and to elucidate, clarify some of the misconceptions that have gone forward already at the start of this campaign. And I would answer any questions you may have.
Well, you have heard the voice of the candidate for the constituency of Central Leeward, Sir Louie Straker. And one cannot help but admire his passion, particularly the passion for the poor, which is one of the hallmarks. We've always identified Sir Louie Straker as being one of the persons who never ever gets on a platform without speaking about the poor and without speaking about poverty and its eradication, because of his understanding and of what takes place with the poor, particularly the poor and the working class. I want to leave it open for the media to ask some questions. I expect that you would state your entity from which you've come and ask these questions. Yes, please. I recognize Dougie knows Joseph first. I guess from the news. So,
Dougie knows.
And we'd follow it with Kenton from Eyewitness News.
Dougie knows Joseph, the newspaper. So, Louie, you stated that you're the chairman of National Properties.
Yes.
Are you going to vacate that position now that you're a candidate? Because I could say maybe a precedent has been set where at housing, the housing chairman is no longer the chairman because he's supposed to be the candidate in Central Kingston.
That process would be discussed with the Prime Minister when the process is completed and the National Convention has formally endorsed me. We would be looking at the legal and the moral aspect of it to see whether I should resign my position. It's a little different from housing. As you know, housing dispenses patronage and things that they can give out to affect the election. National houses is more an administrative and management type of thing, that national properties, that doesn't have the same relationship with the public in dispensing anything that would help me to win an election.
But so Louis, and to assist here with Dougie's question as chairman of the party, there is always that particular position that is taken that every candidate going forward for an election resigns all his whether he be chairman or any other public office. He resigns these certainly before nomination. That's no precedent.
Good morning. My name is Kenton Chance of Eyewitness News and the Caribbean Media Corporation. I have several questions, if you'd permit me.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson, can you please tell us whose idea was it that Sir Louie be asked to come back into the ring?
I didn't ask to come back.
That Sir Louie be asked.
Oh.
I guess we can hear.
You can get here. I guess you pick it up. You go ahead here. Just speak. Yeah.
As I said earlier, there was a deadlock, and a decision had to be made. The Prime Minister, in his wisdom, actually asked the people if the two candidates remain at deadlock and there is no decision whether or not he should call Louie Straker to heal the breach. That's actually what happened. And the people said yes. The majority, I should say, there may be one or two dissenting voices, but the majority of persons said, yes, we will support Louie Straker. He therefore called Comrade Charles and myself to a corner, discussed the matter further, asked for our support. It was then that he said, okay, we agree, let us go for Mr. Straker.
Mr. Charles, so Louie has explained the comments that were recorded in that tape. Do you think that they reflect, do you think that those comments were an accurate depiction of you and your performance over the last 4 years? Just.
No, go ahead.
It's okay.
You have all the gadgets now?
Yeah. Okay.
I think at the beginning of the conference, I alluded to that. Without going on hearsay or what, I think I've been a good representative of the people. I think I did my best with what was provided, especially from central government. If you have a cake, it got to be divided. And each person gets a slice. So I think I did my best with the slice with which I was provided. Coming to be a representative of the people, you know, all my life I've dealt with people. whether it be a church, school, the community, in the field of diplomacy, in the UK, whatever. And I think one of my gifts is to deal with people. There was never a time when a constituent of Central Leeward came to my office and went out saying, I don't like how Maxie talked to me. I don't like how we deal with this. They might disagree on a policy, but by and large, I think I represented my people to the best of my ability. The other point I want to make here, and this could go to advice to any of the 5 political parties we have. A political party is like a family living in a house. And in that house, you'd have a porch. In that house, you'd have a toilet. You'd have a dining room. And most of all, you'd have a bedroom. Without going into any detail, if what you should talk in the bedroom is spoken on the porch, you have a problem. And this is just the advice I would like to leave, and leave things at that. I don't know if I would have fully answered your question, but I think I represented the people of Central Leeward. I brought this seat home in 2010, and the rest is history. Thank you.
Kenton, may I just add that there was no criticism on the performance. There was criticism on the style, not the performance. The performance that the party has under the 2 representatives has been solid. It is the style, not the performance. So your question dealt with performance, and we should get the style and performance separate. That's what I want to know.
Okay, so Louie, I have about 2 or 3 questions for you.
Yes.
Can you please remind us of the reasons why you opted out of politics in 2010?
All right, fair enough. I felt that I had reached a point where I should give way to somebody else. If when I entered politics in 1994, I had spent 2 terms in government and had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, I probably would not have stayed this long. But as you know, my first 2 terms were in opposition. And my next 2 terms were in government. Having spent almost 17 years, 3 months short of 17 years in office, you get tired after a while, and you just feel that let's give somebody else a chance. I didn't want to be a career politician. I wanted to come to do something for my constituency, and I could say mission accomplished. I have done far more than what I had set out to do, with the exception of the development of Peter So. And I felt it was fair enough. Besides that, my wife was away for most of the time, and I felt that I needed to get my family, needed to cement and rebond myself with my family and give them a little bit more of my time.
Were you interested at all in running in South Leeward in 2010?
No, absolutely. I saw that nonsense. I never put forward myself as a candidate for South Leeward. South Leeward is an area that I could easily have won. I was chided, as I was explaining to you of things, almost every single household from Cane Grove going right up into the valley is a relative of mine. If you were to drive with me, you would hear everybody call cuz or famo. They are relatives of mine that I've always kept in close contact with. And when the time came and I had finished with Central Leeward, there were several people who were saying, well, when you brought Dougie, you told the people there that if they vote for Dougie, they would get 2 for the price of 1. And you are going out now, and we did not see as much as we would like to see from you in South Leeward. And I really took that to heart, because that's my ancestral village. And this is why very soon you'll be up there to see a bridge that would span between Francois and Vermont. I went all out to get a friendly government to give me $1.9 million to build that bridge. And I worked just before I went out to carry light in a little village beyond Table Rock called Job Hill, to get the lights up there, because that person embarrassed me when he said, I'm leaving, and I didn't do anything for South Leeward. The people in whole of Vermont, Rillan Hill, Chauncey, Kittels, and Clare Valley, not as well known in Camden Park, but they were the ones pushing this idea that I should come. And I told them, well, really, I just came out of one. I didn't want to go back into another. So there were people pushing it and begging me to come to South Leeward.
Are you aware whether or not the leadership of the party entertained the idea?
Yes, the leadership of the party was saying, well, you should consider it. And I resisted it. I said, if you can get a candidate, please let me off. I just can't come out of one into the other. And when they told me they have a candidate in the person of David Brown, I was glad to slip out.
So you were in office, you represented Central Leeward for almost 17 years.
Yes.
Can you identify for us one or two persons that you personally groomed as successors in that constituency?
Well, it's not, candidates don't groom people for succession. If you're a leader like the Prime Minister, he will groom somebody. But I can't take somebody under my arm and impose them on the people. The people have to see the people around them, and when they offer themselves, then they make the choice. I don't have that power to tell the people, this is the man that is going to succeed me. I have groomed him and you must accept him. That is not the job of a representative. It may be the job when a prime minister is leaving office, but not the job of a representative. As I told you, Maxwell had always indicated to me that he wanted to succeed me. Dunstan wanted to succeed me also. And these are two gentlemen, they offer themselves to the public in Central Leeward, and the public would make a decision, not me.
Okay, my final question for you. In that recording, there was an incident where you detailed about a nurse.
Yes.
And you said that apparently Mr. Charles had not followed up in the way that he should have or could have. What would you say to people who might feel aggrieved, who might feel that the interventions of politicians might affect what should be a meritocratic process, and in so doing might cause other people who are worthy of acceptance not to receive such appointments?
The premise of your question is that this person was not of merit. If the person is of merit, because they have certain criteria in accepting someone in nursing, and of course, initially she did not meet that criterion. And this is why Maxwell helped her to get the additional subject. It is not a matter, it is my position as a representative, one of advocacy, one of helping anybody in the constituency. And anybody who comes to me, as long as they are qualified, they have criteria for qualification. If they are qualified and I can help them, it is my duty as their representative to do what I can to help them. And I'm sure you would agree with me, if you are the representative of a constituency and you have someone who is qualified who comes to you and you can do anything, you have to intercede on behalf of that person. If you tell me no, then I'll tell you don't go into politics, because you would not be a good representative.
Maybe just supplementary, but
Yes.
if the person meets the criteria, why does an MP have to advocate on their behalf? Can the committee not make those judgments outside of the intervention?
Yes, but when you're choosing 10 and you have 100 applications, it is a different thing. If it's a matter that you just choose, but when you have just a few and you have far more applications, and one of the things, I tell you the truth, this young lady has come from one of the poorest families in Central Leeward. And I tell you something, I'll add to that. While I was in America, I would dare say that there is nobody, not in Central Leeward, but in all of St. Vincent, who has helped more poor people to come to America than I did. And when I came back here on vacation, and I saw some of my old schoolmates, and the poverty has had its toll on them, and I would try to help them, particularly the women, because in those days, women could do sleeping job. It was the easiest thing. And they all stayed in my house. As a matter of fact, the last one I had there, I came down here, I asked the mother said, well, my mother is old and I can't leave her. Help one of the children, and I carried him up there, and he stayed with me for a little over a year. Then my son, fourth son who was big now, said, Daddy, when are we going to live together as a family? From the time I was born, we always have somebody else in the house. And so when you have a person like that, very poor family, but one eked out an education, got an education, and could really lift the rest of the family, I would go all out to help that one so that that one can lift the rest of the family.
Thank you, Sir Louie. Dougie, I recognize you coming again. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, this question basically is between yourself and Sir Louie. The first part is for you, Snag, in terms of when is the next election within the Unity Labour Party in terms of positions such as secretary, chairman, leader, deputy leader?
I know what you're aiming at, but I'll leave that for the chairman. Dougie, I know what you're aiming at.
And you seem to be fully interested in how we, Yeah, but it's not going to be at this convention. It's going to be at the next convention.
And this convention is coming next month?
This convention is coming on the 19th of April.
Which is before the elections?
Which is before which elections?
The next general election. Mm-hmm. Because I have not heard anything about Parliament being dissolved and so on.
Oh, no, well, when you hear that is the prerogative of the Prime Minister.
Now,
all right?
Within the, and I must also say, I think this is the first news conference the ULP is having since it became in government. I think so.
No, that couldn't be.
The ULP, I said, eh?
That couldn't be.
But anyway,
that's not so.
My next question, at this point, we are hearing that Sister Gordon Miguel is not going to contest the next general election, whenever it is due. And we also know that she's the deputy leader of the Unity Labour Party. With Sir Louie now back in the stream, let's say things remain as they are, 7, 8, 8, 7, as they are, in terms of the government setup, and the next election produce the same results as that of 2010. Just
go ahead, Dougie. Go ahead. I listen to you coming around. We're taking long to get to it.
The Unity Labour Party will by then has its election to elect officers. So, Louie, are you interested, or will you be interested in becoming the party's deputy leader and also deputy prime minister?
Well, you're jumping the gun a little bit. My first job is to get elected.
Well, that is why I say if things remain the same.
Yeah, but I do not know what the people in the party might decide. I can't preempt their judgment in this matter. If the people ask me to, I am not coming in with any grandiose ideas that I want to get back my former position. I'm not. All I want to be is a good representative for Central Leeward. That would satisfy me if I can do something. If the people ask me for what you're saying there, then certainly I'd have to give it careful consideration, but that is way down the road.
Have a supplementary, Doug?
No, I have not. I'm coming back to a question to you. You made a point just now that persons who are selected to run and they are chairman of boards, it is normally the normal procedure that they resign. Have you ever resigned as chairman of the port while you were selected to contest the Southern Grenadine seat?
Oh yes, because I was chairman of the Port Authority from September 2008 and resigned the position of chairman of the Port Authority prior to the 2010 elections.
Okay.
I don't know where the genesis of your question may have come from. I don't know if you would have heard to the contrary, but if you did, then that is a total untruth.
No, I never said that you did. You never.
No. But I'm just drawing that. I'm just drawing that to your attention, because what I'm telling you is that we resigned the position of director of Grenadines Affairs. Herman Belmar would resign as deputy director of Grenadines Affairs. As I said to you, we all resign all public office prior to nomination.
Prior to nomination?
Yes.
Okay. So Louie may go right up to nomination?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't say.
The Unity Labour Party will be having a celebration on Saturday the 28th?
On the 28th of March, yes.
Okay. Can you give us some idea as to how it will play out? What can persons go in there expect?
Well, I think that's something we should really put out for the General Secretary, because the General Secretary is really the chief organizer when it comes to the question of party events, you know. But what I could tell you, it is going to be a phenomenal event.
So we don't know who the speakers and so on and so forth.
No, but the thing about it is that we don't necessarily have to determine who the speakers are. No, obviously you would hear that it's being held in the constituency of East St. George, all right, in Calicut. I would expect this is what I'm saying, but the thing about it is that you don't necessarily have to have a final agenda now. But I would expect that the person who is vying for the seat would possibly be a speaker and also the political leader. I mean, who else will speak? Doesn't matter, you know. I mean, I don't know the General Secretary right behind here, you know, and I didn't mind bringing him into the whole story. You understand what I mean? But Doggy, that yeah. But you're asking a question and the kindness don't do it. But this is the transparency that we're giving here.
Yeah, but will there be any person from foreign coming in to have this to say anything?
To do what?
No.
We ran our own campaign for years, we'll run it again. You know what I mean? We beat SCL the last time, you know. SCL go and campaign and work for the Labour Party in St. Kitts, and the Labour Party in St. Kitts get licks. You know? I use local people, and if I have expertise that I need, I hire them. Bye.
No, I wouldn't want you to go in that direction. We would realize that we have hosted this at the party's office, because there is that distinction between party and government, and I wish that you would respect that.
So, okay, the General Secretary stated on radio last Tuesday that by Wednesday he was supposed to have some another person in the Marico area indicating no more interest. Can you tell me if that has happened?
No, Dougie, come on, let's saw that. We are sitting about it.
No, the General Secretary.
I know that the General Secretary.
And this is party matters.
The General Secretary would have said that. But what I'm saying here to you is that all matters with relation to candidacy in all the constituencies have been resolved.
All. So can the General Secretary tell us who is the person now in Marico?
If the General Secretary chooses to do so, he can. But as I'm telling you, see, one of the things about it is that this is a phenomenal event we're having here, because I don't think that you would ever had any sort of briefing taking place with any political party as you are having here, particularly in the internal affairs. But I would allow the General Secretary to open it up so that all and sundry could hear.
The General Secretary was mandated by the Central Executive to bring Marico and West Kingstown in some order with regards to candidate selection. I've spoken to Michelle Fife in West Kingstown, and she has consented to withdraw her interest in running for West Kingstown. That leaves the name of Deborah Charles alone for consideration. In Marico, I've had the commitment from Godson Kane and Kirk De Silva that they will withdraw their interest in candidacy. That leaves Jimmy Prince as the man for Marico. And those two matters will be settled at dates to be agreed upon. Done now?
All right, I guess so.
On the matter of Belma and Snag in the Grenadines, I have heard no other name coming forward to compete against these two stalwarts. Snag has served us well in Southern Grenadines for years, and I'm sure that he's ready, able, fit and willing to run the course again. And I just saw on my email this morning a request for a candidate selection meeting in Northern Grenadines, and the name that has come to me is Belma.
All right, so let me thank you. I think that we've reached the end of the line. I hope that Dougie is smiling. He seems totally satisfied with what is taking place in the ULP. So Let me thank you for coming and for your participation here this morning. And I want to thank Sir Louie, and I want to thank the two honorable gentlemen to my right and to my left, Mr. Dunstan Johnson and Maxwell Charles. And I know that when you leave here, that the media is quite satisfied that there is total cohesion and unity within the Unity Labour Party, particularly in the constituency of Central Leeward. And of course, you would expect that this will be returned into the fold of the ULP when the next general elections are called. So thank you very much.
I think we should really hold it.
Let's hold on. Let them.